achieved.
Heading into this weekend's pay-per-view, we have a UFC welterweight title fight featuring the champion Tyron Woodley defending his title for the first time in over a year against title challenger Darren Till. Now, the issue that exists is that Darren Till has missed weight in 2 of his last 4 fights, and while he has won both those bouts and earned himself a title shot, people are still a little bit leery about what could happen if he misses weight. Now, the UFC attempted to have a backup plan in place with Kamaru Usman, another very worthy challenger who's worked his way up, prepared and ready to take the title shot should Till miss weight. And the champion Tyron Woodley said no, not happening, not fighting him, not taking him on should it not happen. It's not going to go down. And some people are dumping all over him. I think it's a smart business move. As much as I want to see a fight and be very disappointed if there isn't a title fight if Till misses weight, I get it. Why would Woodley put his title on the line against a challenger who Till and Usman are 2 entirely different fighters, and less than 24 hours you have to turn around and prepare for him? Or waste some of your training camp prepping for a secondary opponent that might not happen? You can't do that in a business where the UFC basically cuts you loose at the first moment's notice of your decline. Again, that's a little bit over the top. But still, it's the type of business where as soon as you start to go downhill and start to decline, your days are numbered. You look at a guy like Josh Koscheck, who Tyron Woodley helped build his name off of. He was once in this position, challenging the title, considered one of the top welterweights, didn't win the title, but once he started going downhill, it was only a matter of time before he was out. Woodley does not want to risk that and starting that decline and losing the title on a whim because the UFC wants to make sure the fight goes down. Again, at the same time, I give a lot of props to fighters who do take these type of fights, and good for them. They are willing to take the risk, they understand the risk, and we go from there. But I'll be very interested to see, and hopefully Till steps on the weight scale, makes weight, and we get to have that welterweight title belt. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC 228 event, which will take place on September 8th from the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas, featuring not 1 but 2 title fights with the welterweight belt on the line, along with the women's flyweight fight. We have a very fun, exciting card. I'll be giving you my 5 main card predictions for this event. All of my preliminary picks, as per usual, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. You can head over there and check it out. And also, when you head over, you can consider buying the bet packs that I will be posting. They are $15 a pop, and I don't give you 1 or 2 bets. I give you betting advice on every single fight. We talk about every single matchup. We talk about props for potential matchups. I have betting scenarios that I've been tracking for several years, and you can go back and see all the stats on those different fights that usually produce certain results, and more often than not do. I have my confidence lists, my best value lists. We have a number of different things. I post some fantasy picks as well. I break down and explain to you why some guys are good fantasy plays, why some fighters are not. And generally speaking, I try and give you as an extensive breakdown of the event as possible. I just dislike it when people give you, for $50, here's my 2 picks. I just want to give you as much information as I possibly can. I never guarantee wins. I guarantee I put in hard work, and hopefully it turns out. Now, this is the restart of a subscription period. There's 5 events over the next 2 months. What's that, September and October? Usually, it's $15 an event. So for a subscription, this one it would usually cost you $75. You'll be able to pick it up for $60. So essentially, you're getting 1 event free or a couple bucks off each card. It's entirely up to you if you want to lock in. But let's put things in perspective. I'm coming off a fairly solid show. Not an amazing show. I did go 10-3 at UFC 135. I lost the James Vick main event, which snapped my 4 fight winning streak for picking main events correctly. I went 10-3 overall, and both my big bankroll bundle, which is a betting bundle that is geared towards people who want to grind a little bit more, bet more money on less fights, it won 56, almost 57 units. My big reward bundle, which is people who want to risk, don't have as much money to bet, so they want to have higher risk and hopefully higher return, it won 50 units. Now, that's not profit, that's winning. The units, obviously, profit not quite as large in those scenarios, but I went back over the last little while, and over the last 5 events, I went 43-21 predicting fights, which is 67%, which is pretty darn solid. Overall, let's just take a quick peek overall. Overall, both my big bankroll and my high risk had 3 winning nights and 2 losing nights over those 5 events. The end of it, my big bankroll, I had 44 units profit, that is profit, and my high risk, or my big risk, big reward, had 67 units profit. And those are good returns. And again, people want to point out, well, you're not doing it right. You're doing it, yeah, I'm not. I'm doing it a different way, and it works. It doesn't always work, but it's working. And if you go back and you look at some of my events prior to that, let's take a look. UFC 224, my big bankroll won 106 units. UFC Fight Night 128, my big reward parlay won 114 units. UFC 222, my big reward parlay won 156 units. My big bankroll won 88 units. Continuing back, UFC Fight Night 125, big reward won 98 units. You know, we've had a very, very good run over the last little while. You go way back to UFC Fight Night 114. My big reward parlay returned 211 units. That's sizable. That's a huge return for an event like that. When was UFC 114? That was a little while ago. Calendar year? No, not quite. That was winding out. That was back not quite a year ago. But you know, right before that, we go to UFC 117. My UFC Fight Night 117. My big reward won 119 units. So it's producing wins and big wins. Not all the time, but enough to suggest to see that there is value in how I do things. And if you're looking for an alternative way from the conventional way of betting, certainly look at it in investing and take a look at the bet shop. On that note, that's a lot of rambling for me. We have 5 very good main card fights to break down, so let's get to that first main card prediction. We open things up in the UFC's welterweight division as Abdul Razak Alhassan, 9 wins and 1 loss, takes on the hybrid Niko Price, coming with a record of 12 wins, 1 loss, and 1 no contest. Now, Alhassan is coming off back-to-back first-round knockout wins over Sabah Hamasi, first doing at UFC 218 and then again at UFC 220. The first was a bit controversial. The second was very definitive. Overall, the fighter is 3-1 inside the octagon. For Price, he has won 2 consecutive bouts. He is 4-1 in the UFC with a no contest, which was a knockout win over Alex Morano. So, you know, for all it's worth, what we're worried about his wins and losses. He's technically 5-1 inside the octagon. Price, he's 2 inches taller, have a 3-inch reach advantage, and he is the younger fighter by 4 years. Now, these guys combined have 17 wins by knockout. Alhassan 9, Price has 8, but there's one major difference. All 9 of Alhassan's knockouts have come in round number 1. The first 7 he acquired came inside the 92nd mark of round number 1. That's impressive and scary. His last 2 coming later in the opening frame. His only career loss was a split decision loss to Omari Akhmedov in his only fight to go outside of the opening frame. He went the distance and dropped that fight. Now you look at Niko Price. He has 8 first-round finishes, 6 by knockout, 2 by submission, but he has a very solid record outside of the opening round with a record of 4-1 in those fights, and again 5-1 if you count the Morano fight, who he stopped in the second frame. Now the big question is, can Alhassan win a fight that goes outside of the first 5 minutes? His cardio and his counter wrestling appear to be the biggest issues. He is a massive power puncher. He throws big strikes with with both hands, and he looks to whack his opponents up and just keep engaging until he puts them away. Now he does try to fight at a controlled pace and maybe conserve some of that, his energy for later on. But he sits at range. But once he starts unloading and closing the distance, it's just all energy, all power, all forced. In his only defeat, the loss to Akhmedov, he gave up 6 takedowns, and it's more significant when you consider the fact that Akhmedov is also known for slowing down and becoming less durable in fights and getting stopped later in bouts because he just cannot maintain what he's doing. So that's worth noting. In that fight, Akhmedov landed 1 takedown on 2 tries in the first round, but over rounds 2 and 3, he landed 5 of 7, which suggested that Alhassan was having a sizable drop-off in his cardio and was getting ground down. Now, Abdul Razak does have a judo black belt, but it doesn't appear to be helping his takedown defense. He's been taken down on multiple occasions, so that's something we have to look at here, because a guy like Niko Price, he has shown himself a very smart fighter. He's not the world's best athlete. He's a very good fighter, but he's very intelligent, and he fights to his opponent's vulnerabilities. Coming into the UFC, he only had 1 career submission victory compared to a sizable number more knockouts. He takes on Brandon Thatch, a guy who's struggling with his grappling and submission defense. What's he do? He takes him down, he submits him. Again, he did that against George Sullivan as well, another guy who was struggling with takedowns and his submission defense, takes him down, submits him. He's showing that he looks to exploit his opponent's vulnerabilities. He's not a big volume striker or a big volume wrestler with big takedowns, but he's opportunistic, and once he gets on the ground, he looks to finish. He did have some issues at times with the forward pressure of the striking of Vicente Luque in his 1 UFC defeat, but in that fight, it's one of those fights where he knows Vicente Luque's lethal on the feet and probably more dangerous on the mat with his grappling game, so he didn't have that opening to exploit. He didn't have that secondary option to go to, which was takedowns. I like the fact that Price is incredibly durable. He has power in his own hands. More so, he's going to probably do it with a little more accumulation than Alhassan. and he's just dangerous wherever this fight goes, especially against a guy who is known to slow down. Alhassan has the power to take anyone out, but I think Price is going to use his reach to keep him at range and then shoot and change levels when Alhassan comes forward. You know, Price has more avenues to victory here. He could pick up an early submission. He could use takedowns and exhaustion to wear him out, equating to a late submission victory. The takedowns could also equate to a decision victory, or even a late TKO finish. Where Alhassan, he pretty much needs to win this fight in the opening round by knockout. Not saying he can't do it, but I like the options that Price has available to him. I like the vulnerabilities and the way he has shown his ability to exploit his opponents in the past. So my prediction is Niko Price to defeat Abdul Razak Alhassan by submission. Fight number 2 in the main card takes place in the women's strawweight division as the number 2 ranked and former title challenger Jessica Andrade, 18-6-0, takes the number 4 ranked and also former title challenger Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I'm probably butchering that. 12 wins and 2 losses. That's how I've known to come to say it, Kowalkiewicz, so I'm going to stick with it for the duration of this video. Now, this is a potential number 1 contenders bout. You know, Andrade lost to Joanna at the time, Jędrzejczyk, but she's never fought Rose. Kowalkiewicz lost to Joanna as well, but she actually beat Rose in a split decision, which led to her title shot. So both girls, whoever wins this fight, positions themselves very well for a shot at the current champion. Now, Andrade comes into this matchup having won 2 consecutive bouts, and she's beat Tecia Torres and beat the absolute fucking brakes off of Claudia Gadelha in a fight that I correctly predicted. And really, I got both those right, but the Gadelha fight, he was a big underdog in that matchup. And she's 5-1 since moving to strawweight with the only loss to the champion. So she's looked exceptionally well in this division. For Karolina, she's 5-2 at strawweight. Her losses, of course, to Joanna and Gadelha, who was able to submit her in what was essentially a post-title fight letdown scenario, which, you know, everybody, you know, I always talk about how that plays a role coming out of that title fight. A lot of fighters come out flat as they're looking to rebuild, and it's hard to get motivated. Physically, Karolina 2 inches taller, so with a 2-inch reach advantage. Andrade is the younger fighter by 6 years. Now, besides Andrade beating Gadelha and Karolina losing that matchup, there's some drastic differences in how they've gone about their business getting to this point. For Karolina, she beat both Felice Herrig and Rose via split decision. And actually, of her 7 decision wins, 4 of them have come by split decision. So that tells you in some cases she has trouble winning fights like that. Or she doesn't have trouble winning fights. She struggles sometimes to distance herself from opponents when she can't finish them. When you look at Andrade, though, I said she beat the brakes off of Claudia. She smashed Jessica Penne and finished Joanne Calderwood on the mat. Jojo Calderwood on the mat. She landed 131 significant strikes against Angela Hill, 92 significant strikes, and 10 takedowns against Torres. She's beaten her opponents more convincingly overall. The Brazilian has. Now, one of the things that contributes to that, and definitely contributes to the 4 wins by split decision for Kowalkiewicz, is that she's developed a reputation for being a bit of a slow starter. Started slow against Rose, was losing, turned that fight in her favor and won. Had her moments later against Joanna, that was her best time. She got run over by Gadelha early on in that matchup, but traditionally she's had fights where she, and again against Herrig, I guess, a little bit as well, where she doesn't get it going and then she's able to rally, which is fantastic, and that's something you want to see in a fight, the ability to dig deep and win matchups, but you don't want to see that constantly happening, as it will eventually catch up to you. When you look at what fighters have done against Karolina, they focused on taking her down. Randa Marcos early on had her best success. She took her down, took her back, and really won the particular round on the strength of her ground game. Rose landed 2 takedowns. Gadelha takedown submission early on. Felice Herrig shot 5 takedown attempts. Didn't land any of them, but again, that's a focus, and fighters clearly are seeing something they want to exploit, or at least seeing they don't want to stand and bang with her on the feet. When you look at Jessica Andrade, that's been something she's focused on heavily. 10 takedowns against Torres, as I previously mentioned. She took down Claudia Gadelha 4 times. Beating her on the mat is no easy task. She took Joanna down twice. She's landed 20 takedowns over her last 5 bouts, 2 or more per fight since destroying Jessica Penne on the feet. Now, once Andrade gets on top, she is an absolute monster. Huge ground and pound. Again, dominating Gadelha was no easy task, and she just wears her opponents out, but if she can't finish them with strikes on the mat, she's got 7 wins by submission, 6 by guillotine. She took Calderwood down, handled her, and led to that chokeout submission. And it's one of those things where you start getting beat up, you're willing to risk your neck to try and get out of that position, and then boom, fight's over. So she's a double threat on the ground. Now, as the Karolina's tendency to fall behind early does not play well with Andrade's ability to pile up damage. And the way she puts damage on you and puts you behind on the scorecards and puts you down, and it takes a lot out of you, it's going to be too much for Karolina to come back from. But on the other side, what we see Andrade throws big heat on the feet, and she throws a lot of power strikes, and she'll come forward and attack. But Joanna was able to keep her at distance and land more volume. And Hill had some success landing as Andrade came forward. And it seems like Jessica can't adjust if her forward pressure isn't doing enough to win. She did hit Joanna 83 times, which is impressive, but it wasn't enough to win that fight. She didn't make the adjustments needed because she couldn't land the takedowns and couldn't get in and do damage, couldn't get her hands on her. Karolina can work a volume game. 126 significant strikes against Herrig, 127 against Jody Escobel, 119 against Clark. She's more than capable of putting up big volume numbers. She's at her best chance to win this matchup by keeping the fight at a distance and countering and pot-shotting Andrade as she comes forward. Can she do it for 3 full rounds? Is she quick enough? I don't know. I don't think so. But she has the skill to do it, but it's that what can Andrade do to overcome it? I think she has the tools to do it. Look for Jessica Andrade to get rolling early, hammer Kowalkiewicz on the mat with strikes, force her to try and escape, and eventually... Initially, I was leaning towards a submission victory, but my prediction is Jessica Andrade to defeat Karolina Kowalkiewicz by decision. Fight number 3 in the main card takes place in the UFC's featherweight division and features the 15th ranked and skyrocketing Zabit Magomedsharipov, coming with a record of 15 wins and 1 loss, and he's taking a late notice replacement, Brandon Killer B. Davis, with a current record of 9 wins and 4 defeats. Now, this bout was originally scheduled to feature Yair Rodriguez taking a Magomedsharipov. This was actually the matchup that Yair was cut over when he initially refused it, and now he's since pulled out, which is ironic and interesting. We'll see if there's anything more to that. Now, Davis is stepping in on roughly 2 weeks' notice to take this matchup and looking to get himself, he rockets himself right up into the rankings with a win here. Now, Magomedsharipov has won 11 consecutive bouts, 3 in the UFC, 2 of those coming by submission. He did go the distance in his last matchup with Kyle Bochniak. Is he being groomed for the next shot at 145 pounds? A win over Rodriguez certainly could have justified that, getting right up there just behind the likes of Ortega, obviously, or Holloway and Ortega fighting next. Frankie Edgar's getting the shot after that, but Zabit could be right in the mix there. He's got some more wins to accrue, but still impressive. Davis actually lost his UFC debut to Bochniak, dropped a decision in that matchup. He beat Steven Peterson in the next fight, and then lost to Enrique Barzola in his most recent bout. All of those fights coming by decision. So he's 1-2 in the promotion. Magomedsharipov is 3 inches taller. He'll have a 1-inch reach advantage, and he's the younger fighter by a year as well. Now looking at Mags here, he is a massive featherweight. Davis is not small by any stretch of the imagination, but Mags is just a big man. It looks like when he's in there, when he's fighting other fighters in this division, that he's like a lightweight fighting, lightweight or even maybe a welterweight fighting a featherweight, and he knows how to use that length and size to really dwarf guys and take advantage of those opportunities. He's a fairly diversified striker. He throws lots of kicks, knows how to use his length fairly well. Spinning attacks he'll work in. He's generally speaking, he's dangerous on the feet. He has 6 wins by knockout, some of which came on the mat, but still he's capable of competing on the feet and doing damage and mixing things up. Again, seeing him and Yair on the feet would have been very impressive. He's equally as dangerous, if not more dangerous, though, on the ground as a grappler and a wrestler. He's got a lot of wins by submission, 6 in fact, same amount there. Lots of chokes, that's what he tends to gravitate towards. He's got a solid takedown game overall. Look for him to use trips and throws from the clinch body locks as well. He landed 11 against Moraes in that victory. Shame Moraes, 5 against Bochniak when he defeated him. And the Bochniak fight was big because it showed he can win fights when he's not able to finish his opponents. Now, Davis, overall, he has had issues with his takedown defense. Enrique Barzola, who's a takedown machine, took him down 10 times. Bochniak, he landed 3 takedowns in that fight. Even Steven Peterson landed 1 takedown in their matchup. And overall, Davis, he's done not a bad job getting back up, but he's had mixed results at times. He seems to get frustrated with his opponents who just want to wrestle him or don't want to stand and bang with him. You could see in the Bochniak fight, he was very frustrated at times because Kyle wasn't willing to stand and bang with him. Davis, he did well against Peterson because Peterson engaged him, came forward, was very linear, and Davis was able to throw hands with him and land as much as he did, and that was the key to his success there. But in other fights, when fighters use a diversified approach, he struggles. Davis doesn't have the power, I don't think, to back Mags off, and he lacks the counter wrestling to stay vertical. And Magomedsharipov type of guy, if he gets you down, you're in serious trouble. Whether he keeps you down for the entire round or he submits you, It's not good either way. I would say Zabit he's simply too diversified as a striker on the feet, especially use those longer range weapons. They'll keep Davis on the outside. That unless Davis can hurt him or just do something to get him off his game, he's going to struggle to match him anywhere this fight goes. I think Magomed's going to take him down. He's going to control him on the floor. And Davis will survive, though. I think Davis will keep him working, but he's just not going to do enough offensively to be in this fight. And my prediction is to beat Magomedsharipov to defeat Brandon Davis by. We'll take Magomedsharipov by decision. We move right along now to the first of our 2 UFC title fights as the women's flyweight champion puts her belt on the line for the very first time as Nicco Montano, 5 wins and 2 losses, takes on the number 1 ranked fighter in the division and former bantamweight title challenger Valentina Bullet Shevchenko, currently holding a record of 15 wins and 3 losses. Now this is, as I said, the first 125-pound title fight. Title defense, not title fight. Montano is making her first defense. Only 6 pro fights overall. She lost her final tough bout before she came to the UFC. But when you look at, you also mix it on the show. In order to win the title, she beat Lauren Murphy, Montana De La Rosa, and Barb Honshank, who was the Invicta champion coming into the show and one of the top ranked, number 1 or 2 coming into the show. That's very impressive. And even more so, as Montano was ranked 14th of 16 fighters heading into the tournament. She was actually supposed to face Ciara Eubanks in the final. Eubanks came in ranked number 12 and was destroying people as well and beating them up. So unfortunately, that fight never got to happen. We could still see that happen down the road, especially if Montano is able to retain her title here. Now, Shevchenko, she lost a split decision to Amanda Nunes for the bantamweight title. She only has 2 losses over the last 10 bouts, both to Nunes. And in that stretch, she beat Holly Holm. She beat Raquel. Her name escaped. Pena. And she also beat Sarah Kaufman back in the day, which I thought was an impressive victory, especially I think it was her debut. She had then looked dominant in her 125-pound debut last time out. Physically, same height. Shevchenko will have a 2-inch reach advantage. They are the same age. And Shevchenko comes into this matchup as a massive betting favorite, arguably one of the biggest favorites as a title challenger we have ever seen. So that's significant. And again, a lot of that comes back to the lack of experience. Montano, 6 pro bouts, 9 if you want to include the 3 Ultimate Fighter exhibition bouts. You can't, but you can at least see the pathway I'm taking here with the quality of opposition and the experience still being a factor. Shevchenko, 18 MMA bouts, 6 in the UFC. So she has as many fights in the UFC as Montano does, period. But then when you also look at it, again, her record still is, I haven't found everything, but what I can find, 57 combined pro and amateur kickboxing bouts with a total of 2 defeats, and I think she had 3 wins. I believe they were amateur over Joanna Jędrzejczyk when kickboxing. She has a massive experience advantage coming into this fight, not even when you consider, even more when you consider that she's fought for the title at a higher weight class. Now, Montano is 2-2 in decisions overall. She has 2 wins by knockout. All of her Ultimate Fighting victories came by decision. And she put up good numbers when you look at the stats first against Roxanne Modafferi in her title fight victory. 186 significant strikes and 3 takedowns. That's pretty solid. Now, the fight wasn't all peaches and cream for Niko. She was rocked by Modafferi and struggled at times with her pressure. Roxanne's not an elite-level striker by any stretch of the imagination. You got to love her persona and everything about her. But there's some things that just, aren't smooth what she does, and she was still having success. She landed a couple of takedowns in that matchup. Now, we did see Montano attack off her back and have some success, but again, Modafferi had some big moments in that fight. And overall, again, Montano has outworked her opponents in her victories, and that's been her key to success. And again, it's worth noting that Roxanne was having success in that fight, but she had prepared for a different opponent and not to go 5 rounds. And I think, and she faded a little bit, I think that cost her. So you wonder if Roxanne had a full opportunity to fight, to prepare for 5 rounds, would that have made a difference? I don't know. Now, Shevchenko, she has an impressive and diversified striking background. She beat Holly Holm in a primarily striking bout. She's exceptionally strong on her feet. She throws good kicks. Her hands are solid. She can work in the clinch with knees and elbows and short punches overall. She's very good wherever this fight takes place on the feet. But the big difference that has taken her, I feel, to that next level is that she knows how now to pick up takedowns, especially from the clinch, using trips and throws. She's become a multifaceted fighter. She landed 2 takedowns in her last fight and dominated her opponent, outlanding her 95-2. That's not a mistake. 95 significant strikes landed by Valentina. Her opponent landed 2. And the reason it was such a blowout, and then of course that led to the submission, is because Shevchenko took her down and blasted her on the mat. And she exploited that her struggles on the ground and was incredibly impressive. That fight should have been stopped long before it got to 95-2, but it didn't. Shevchenko also submitted Pena on the mat. Why is this? This is really pissing me off. I have to go look at this now. Why is her name? I know she's off right now. Scroll. Juliana Frigg. She submitted Juliana Pena on the mat, which is damn impressive because Pena is known for being a bully and a handful from top position. So I was very impressed with that victory. When she fought home, she landed 3 takedowns as well, and really showed home she was a more multifaceted fighter, even 4 in her debut against Kaufman, so it's been something she's been working on all along. Overall, Shevchenko has simply fought at a much higher level of mixed martial arts. Montano is simply not there yet. And while Ultimate Fighter fighters tend to show a leap between matchups, especially when they're relatively new to MMA, which Montano is, I don't think it's going to be big enough here. Shevchenko is going to win the striking exchanges. She's going to force Montano to shoot and look for takedowns. It's not going to work. Shevchenko will eventually get this fight to the floor, beat her up on the ground, force her into some bad spots. And my prediction is Valentina Shevchenko to defeat Nicco Montano by submission. And finally, we move to the main event, which we previously discussed in the intro to the show. The UFC's welterweight belt will be on the line as the chosen one, the champion Tyron Woodley, 18-3-1, puts that strap up against England's own, the number 2 ranked fighter in the division, Darren the Gorilla Till, with a record of 17 wins, no losses, and 1 draw. Damn impressive record. Now, the first thing, as we already talked about, Till has missed weight in 2 of his last 4 fights, including his win over Stephen Thompson. Both times he missed weight. I believe he came in at 174 for the first one, 176 for the second one. The second one obviously being a little higher profile fight. And a lot of people are suggesting he needs to show he can make weight before fighting for the title. And while he has done it in the past, he needs to do it more recently. He's obviously getting bigger and stronger and growing. So that's a concern. And some people would suggest that Kamaru Usman is just the better, more deserving fighter right now to get a shot at the title. Obviously, Till beating Thompson is huge, but doing it in essentially a catchweight bout, does that negate his validity as a title challenger? I don't know. We'll see here. Woodley, as I said, he won't fight Usman, the backup fighter. You know, he tends to be a company man. He works a lot of the shows doing commentary. But I think he's making the smart choice here. And of course, again, we talked about it in the intro. I don't need to address it anymore. When you look at Woodley, he's beat an impressive list of fighters. Carlos Condit, Young Kim, Kelvin Gastelum, Robbie Lawler, Stephen Thompson, Damian Maia. Now, the one thing that might be notable about that, and he beat some other big names before that, but a lot of those guys are past it now. Carlos Condit seems to be near the end of his career. Young Kim as well. Robbie Lawler, still relevant, but certainly not where he was. Stephen Thompson maybe reached his peak and has gone down a little bit. Damian Maia, certainly at the end of his career. Kelvin Gastelum fighting for the middleweight title. That was an interesting fight. Kelvin missing weight, not fighting to his potential. So maybe a couple of guys are exception to the norm, but you wonder, is Woodley, is he hitting to that point where the new blood's going to come up and threaten him and take him out? Till, he's seen that nice steady increase of competition, fighting some lower level guys when he came into the UFC. Then he jumped to Donald Cerrone and took him out with relative ease, and then he beat Stephen Thompson. I took Thompson in that fight. I was wrong. But again, it was very debatable. A lot of people felt Thompson won. Some people had Thompson winning all 5 rounds, or at least 4, and then we turned around and see Darren Till winning the matchup. So again, it's debatable. It was close, but Darren Till got the nod. Physically, Till's a massive welterweight. He, as some people would say, he's the size of a light heavyweight. He's huge. He's 6 foot tall. He's 3 inches taller than Woodley. They actually have the same reach. Woodley's got some long ass arms for a guy who's only 5 foot, 9. Till, though, is the younger man by 10 years. That's a big age gap. And Woodley's been out of action for just over 13 months. That's a prolonged period of time to be out of competition. Now, the first thing we look at here is how does Woodley win this matchup? How does the champion retain his title? He has big power, and he can hurt and stop just about anyone in the division. And that is usually one of the keys to his success. He's explosive. He's quick. He kept Stephen Thompson, a very good striker, from fighting Thompson's game because he was afraid of getting clipped with one of those big shots and being put down. And when he was hit, he was hurt. Woodley likes to launch forward, throw big power. That big right hand's always ready to unload. He will sit back, wait for chances to engage, and then do so. He can also win this matchup by wrestling. The ground and pound he has available to him could lead to a finish. He hurt Thompson on the mat and had him in some trouble. More importantly, though, if he scores takedowns, he can hold top position and, as I said, either score a finish or he can score points. And, pardon me, You know, he can show he can win a decision with a couple of takedowns and a few big moments, if he can keep his opponent at bay the rest of the time. That's what Thompson did. Thompson fighted very cautious, looking to counter-strike, and Woodley didn't give him those opportunities, and Woodley cashed in more than Wonderboy did. And I had Wonderboy in both those fights. It didn't work out. So when you look at this, how does Till win this matchup? He's a very confident striker. He consistently pushed forward against Thompson, which usually is a mistake. You push forward against Wonderboy Thompson, you're going to get cracked with counters. You're going to be in some big trouble. He didn't land a lot of volume. He's never been a big volume striker, but he hits very hard. And he's always moving forward. He threw those oblique kicks, those knee kicks that seem to throw Thompson off his game. I like the way Darren Till throws long strikes. Lots from the left side. He'll use his right more as a disruptor, popping out the jab as a range fighter before coming with the left hand. Now, he does use that southpaw stance, which opens him up to the power right of Woodley, but could also make it awkward for Woodley to engage, and that could throw him off a little bit. It could work against Till as well. Still, the pressure that Till brings can be a major issue for Woodley. Where Thompson sat back and he was a counter striker and let Woodley kind of sit in his own zone and do his own thing. Till's not going to do that. Till likes to push forward, and Woodley tends to struggle when fighters do that. He gets backed up, he gets his back on the cage, he tends to start slowing down a little bit, and it limits his space. He's not nearly as effective, and suddenly he finds himself behind, where he's not landing those. If he doesn't get those opportunities to land those big strikes, or isn't as effective with those big strikes, Till starts doing, or his opponents start doing damage. Doing damage or accruing points. We saw that in the Rory McDonald fight, which was one that I think is a perfect example. And I was waiting for a fight like that to point out these issues that Woodley has. Now, he's been able to avoid them for the most part since, but not entirely. Again, Woodley looks for those moments to attack, and if he doesn't get them, he lets rounds slip away. And I think Till needs to be confident. He needs to engage, use his size against Woodley's wrestling to counter-strike, sprawl and brawl out of those opportunities. Back him up. Don't stop engaging once he gets him backed up. Woodley could be rusty after a long layoff, and I like Till's confidence to come out and get in his face. If he makes weight and does it well, Woodley might be a little bit slow getting out of the blocks. He's not going to be afraid of Woodley's power, I don't think, and that's been one of the keys to keeping fighters at bay. I think he keeps Woodley backing up, eventually hurts him, potentially as Woodley slows down in rounds 2, 3, and beyond. And my prediction is Darren Till to defeat Tyron Woodley and become the new UFC welterweight champion. I've got Darren Till doing it by knockout. So those are my 5 main card predictions for the upcoming UFC 228 event. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so head over there and check them out once you've listened to the video. Please, don't forget to subscribe. Click the subscribe button. I don't always encourage that. I'm also available on Twitter at KO_predictions. You can follow that. I promote my work on there. I do as much as I can to be active during events. It's not always possible, but I do the best I can. Again, preliminary picks at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I can't say that enough because people always, well, where are the rest of your picks? I say it like a dozen times or half a dozen times throughout the video. Yeah, so again, I always appreciate you guys tuning in and checking me out. Consider the bet packs. They're available for $15. I give you a nice breakdown of those in the intro. If you missed that, check that out. And on that note, I hear the music playing. It is time to get the heck out of here. Take care, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Hi.